And so now I am going to introduce Reverend Michelle, who's going to say a few words.
Good morning. I'm sorry. I was trying to send out an invite to some individuals who aren't here. Good morning, everyone. I want to offer you a meditation this morning, but before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about where I was this past week. I attended the INTA, which stands for the International New Thought Alliance Conference. It was their 107th New Thought, their 107th anniversary. And this really was a big deal because present at the conference was every single New Thought organization that exists, from Agape to Anton, which is the associate, help me out, Neil. I always get theirs wrong. New Thought Alliance.
No, are you talking about the Anton?
Anton, yeah.
Yeah, affiliated
New Thought
Network.
Right, affiliated New Thought Network. Michael Beckwith was there. We had CSL there, Divine Science there, Unity there, and the Johnny Coleman organization there. It was a gathering of the movers and shakers in New Thought, and a reassurance that New Thought is very much alive, and that each and every one of us, especially those, if you're watching, if you're here or you see this later, we really have our job to cut out for us. And our job, in my estimation, is to be the teaching at home, on the street, at your work, in your relationships, to speak it, to act from it, to think from it, to be a walking, talking model of possibility, of principle, of love, of compassion, so that even if you're not talking to, you certainly don't want to talk at anyone, but even if you're not talking to someone, that as they engage you, they know that you carry within you something that's special, something that's unique, they want that they can watch you not to own your emotions, that you're not in reaction to stimulus in life, that you don't have to practice road rage, that you don't have to find fault, that you don't have to criticize, and that you can be in a state of perpetual kindness, if nothing else. And in doing that, people get to see, well, we don't have to be reactionary. We don't have to be, a party that condemns. And so to be surrounded by all these different New Thought communities, and we all believe the same thing. We believe there's one. We believe in love and possibility and principle. And so at no point through the week, did I have to look and go, I don't know if I believe that. People had different ways of presenting it. I liked certain presentations more than others, but at no time did anyone say anything that wasn't spot on New Thought. And you are of that legacy. And I want and wish for you that you take that role very seriously in how you engage the world. So that was one thing. It was very moving. It was just very moving. So that's one thing I wanted to say to you. We have a beloved on the screen with us this morning, Antonia, and I don't know, my guess is she's not going to come on screen. Last week, Antonia had a little oops that turned into a major surgery, and she fell, she hurt her shoulder. Thank you, God, that they reached out for prayer. They know to do that. They know to reach out to the practitioners, and I love that about them. So Antonia, since I know you're listening, please know that you continue to be loved, held, supported through your healing process. And I guarantee you that your healing process will be expedited because you turn to prayer first. And for all of you, We have never in 20 years ever told you not to go to a doctor. What we say is, if you have to go to a doctor, just get prayer first, so that everything that you do and the doctor that you engage is the right doctor at the right time. Everything is better. You know, they say in Mary Poppins, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. Well, a treatment makes everything go smoother and better. It really, truly does. A day without prayer is a big missing. So I want to continue to encourage you not only to use our practitioners, but to do it on your own. Please, please, please do it on your own. So Antonia, you are loved and supported and held in the hands of love, as we as practitioners do all the time. We are always, always doing that. And since I'm here, I want to encourage you Tuesday night. If you haven't yet received an invite, you probably will, and if you're curious about it, you can contact us afterwards. Tuesday night, we are gathering in person again. Masks are welcome. We want you to feel safe and comfortable within your, within whatever you do, not a problem. But we want to get together because we want to do some lovely process and some visioning again. And the last meeting we had was lovely. It was lovely. We left there feeling loved and supported, and it wasn't a meeting. It was not an intellectual thing. I'm not trying to get you to be there to bring you through an intellectual process. It is a process of dreaming our reality into being. So I strongly encourage you to join us Tuesday night, 7 o'clock at the Caldwell Church. The information will be in the Remembering You newsletter. I'll make sure that it's in there. So I love you all, and please come. And with that, I'd like to ask you to please spend a couple minutes with me now in a mindful meditation. And so what I'd like to ask you to do is empty your hands, to sit up a little bit taller than usual. Oh, you're so welcome, Antonia. I love you so much. Sit up a little bit taller and allow your eyes to close. And as I said at the meeting, even take off your glasses. So when you take off your glasses, you encourage the inner sight. So let your body get settled. Just stay still. Be at peace. And what I'd like you to do right now, if you will, please, is to imagine that you're breathing from your heart space. You might have to use your imagination for this, but that's okay. And right now, take 3 breaths, and on the exhalation, just kind of let out a sigh. Do that 2 more times, please. And just imagine that your inhalations and exhalations are coming from your heart. Do everything you can to move away from the thinking and just go into the presence of the heart. Now bring to mind, if you will, right now, a symbol, a face, or if you can generate the feeling without anything else, bring in the feeling of love into your body temple. You might need a face to spark that feeling, a memory to spark the feeling. Whatever it is, just settle in and go to the feeling of love. And as you breathe in and out of your heart space, with every breath, let that feeling of love expand. Let that feeling of love expand. Let it fill your body temple. And then if you're sitting next to someone, let the feeling expand beyond your body. And let your feeling, your energy, your vibration of love begin to dance with the vibration of another. Fill the room then as you continue to breathe. Be the presence. Be the presence. Now take one more step and just imagine that this feeling vibration is touching every family member. Every family member. Don't be stingy. Don't choose one person over another. And now I want you to repeat after me as we bring the feeling of love and the feeling of peace together in the way that we used to. I am the peace that I wish to see. I know this peace for my family. I know this peace for my community. My community knows this peace for the world. And with that, take another big breath, expanding that feeling again, because you are the center of consciousness. You are a point of consciousness right where you are, and that point is everywhere present. Now just take one or two more breaths from your upper chest, breathing life and vitality back into your body temple. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so much, Reverend Michelle. And now, oh, I'm not sure why we have echo. Anyway, so now I would like to introduce our own Reverend Neil Pinkman to be our speaker for the day.
Thank you, Evelyn. And thank you, Michelle. Everything that Michelle just brought us through and the way and what she talked about as far as the INTA conference out in Chicago is absolute perfect setting for the talk today. And we've had for the entire month, we've talked about connecting through culture. And this is the third week. There's a fourth week, and Michelle will be back to talk about more on connecting through culture. What I want to talk about today because what I think is the most important part is our culture. Okay, what is the culture that we're creating? What is the culture that I think is going to be the most powerful culture? We have connected through culture. We are connecting through culture. We will continue to connect through culture as we go forward. But what's the culture? Spiritual culture. That's the culture that we are building. That's the culture that we are doing every single day. Not a religious culture, a spiritual culture. Religion really hasn't done what it's needed to do. In so many cases, religion has caused a polarization, even hatred between different religions. Religions are quite often based in a power grab in order to control people. So now that's not to say that all religion is bad. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the polarization that comes from different religions is different. So what we're talking about here is a spiritual culture. Now, I've never heard anybody say, I hate you because you're spiritual. That just doesn't seem to come up. People hate people because they're of a different religion. People hate people because they're of a different belief, and they struggle and they cause a lot of separation and polarization because of it. Yeah, just think, because I know that between the Catholics and the Protestants, both Christian religions, right? But there was a big split. My father was raised Catholic. My mother was raised Lutheran. I wasn't sure what I was. I thought maybe I was a Catherine. But what ended up happening was they had to elope because they couldn't get married in a church because of the division, both Christian religions, okay? This is why a spiritual culture is so important, because it's non-divisive. And that's exactly who we are and what we do and what we're building here, and why I think it is so powerful. It's a spiritual culture. It's not a material culture. It's not object referral. It's a self-referral. And yeah, when we look at what spirituality is, spirituality, you know, the answer to the real question is, yeah, you believe in God if you're spiritual. You may not call it God. You may have a different name for it, but you are believing in something higher, something greater than ourselves in that belief. As a matter of fact, there's never been a group of people since we have recorded history on this that has not believed in a power greater than themselves and honored that power. When I first heard that years ago, it was a little bit like, seriously? I mean, but there really is not one, I'll call it a culture, that was brought through since man that hasn't believed in a power higher than itself. Spiritual culture isn't where we divide. Spiritual culture is one where we ask, how can I serve? Who can I help? Right? Spiritual culture is one of acceptance and allowance, forgiveness. To me, spiritual culture is a bridge between old and new stages of world development. You may have heard us say this before, a world that works for everyone. A spiritual culture is the only thing that provides a platform, a foundation across all different religions, across everything, right? That a world that works for everyone has to start from that place. We have that place. It's what New Thought is all about. If you look at what the word culture, in Sanskrit, if you go all the way back to Sanskrit, culture just means reverence of light. Cult itself means worshiping, honoring of light. okay? And that's what culture means. So anybody who has that light in their hearts, in their souls, are carriers of this spiritual culture. And that's a lot more people on this earth than there are people who are at each other and using religion or some other culture against another, okay? These are the people who demonstrate this spiritual culture every day. But let's take a look at culture. And let's take a look at what we're doing here, because Michelle touched on it beautifully in what she said. How do you create a culture? What is a culture? Okay. A culture is made up of a set of values followed with a behavior, right? That's what develops the culture. You got to have the values, and you have to have the behavior of actually acting that. The behavior, like Michelle said, we need to be the teaching, right? We need to live the principles. We need to be, all of us, as Ernest Holmes said, practitioners of this, right? That is what is going to create the culture and the spiritual culture. We need to practice what we know. What do we know? We know new thought. That's what we know. Excuse me. And noticed I used the word know. I didn't use the word believe. And I've gotten into this discussion before. In my mind, there's a difference between believing and knowing. And I'll give you just a small example. You come to me with an idea and you tell me your idea, and I say, I believe that can work. To me, it's a lot different if you come to me with that idea and I say, I know that can work. Right? It just feels better. It feels a stronger commitment. It feels like, yeah, no, this isn't a matter of, do I believe it or not? There's no question there. I know it. And we know this teaching. We know what this teaching can do. We know how powerful it is. We know that it crosses everybody. We honor all paths. We don't exclude anybody by being in this spiritual culture that we know is new thought. And we need to continue to build that culture. We need this, as Michelle said, we need to be the teaching. This needs to be our way of life. This isn't something we do on a Sunday or a Wednesday night or when we're in a class or when we're in a discussion. We walk it every single day. We're practitioners every single day. Maybe not a practitioner with a Cap P with a license, but you're a practitioner of this teaching. And Buddha once said, ignorance is the worst sin. Well, around here, there's no reason for ignorance. This is why we offer all the classes, all the teaching, all the book studies, all the programs that we offer with Healing the Divide, with the Wisdom Wednesdays, with so many teachings and programs. Even the music program that we have in place is there to help us inspire, learn, and grow, and take this out and walk this and create this spiritual culture that is so damn powerful. And we're here, we're part of it. All of you are. When Michelle was at the INTA conference, she linked me in one night. I was able to hear two of the speakers. And one of them was Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith. The other one was Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins of a Divine Science community down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. You know, and I'm watching this and I'm looking at this and I'm looking at all the logos of all the different organizations like Michelle mentioned, Unity and Divine Science and CSL and just all AGNT and Emerson and so much going on. I wondered why are they there? What's their purpose of coming together and have this conference? The purpose is to build this spiritual culture that we call new thought. This has to grow. This has to expand. Think about it. How are you going to get a world that works for everyone? When I first heard that expression, I was like, oh my God, that's broad. That's a big sweep. How am I going to make that happen? This is how we make that happen. It makes sense to me now. I look at it and I go, we're building the spiritual culture. We're not divisive. We're inclusive. And this is the way that we can get people to agree, not oppose, and disagree. Michael Beckwith was extremely powerful in his teaching and in his speaking, and I had never heard him speak before, and he was enormously powerful, and he is so committed to the concepts of New Thought, and when you hear him speak, you're like, yes, that's what New Thought is. This is terrific. This is the spiritual culture I want to be part of. Dr. Watkins spoke, and he spoke about his community, and they're a divine science community, and they are as committed to New Thought as everybody else at this conference. And when he spoke about his community down in Florida, and that community is very, very committed. They know who they are. They're building a spiritual culture. And even more specifically, they know who they are and who they serve. As he said very bluntly, we're a New Thought community. We're a queer church. That's our audience. Those are the people they're speaking to. He knows who he's speaking to, what his purpose is, and where he wants to deliver his message. And we can be that clear here about who we are. And we have been building this. Thank God that Michelle, Joe, Marcy, you, whoever, that go all the way back to the beginning and built this 20 years ago, as we look forward to this celebration of what we have started here and what we have built. We are a spiritual culture of love and acceptance and allowance and forgiveness, of oneness, of wholeness, of connectedness, of respect, of love, and of kindness. That's not a small statement, folks. There's an awful lot of people who are out there looking for those things that I just mentioned that don't get any of those. You have them. You've developed this. This is why you are here. This is why building the spiritual culture is so, so important. You remember at the back of 662 on the wall, the statement that we had on the back of that wall? Anybody remember it? Our slogan back then, our saying, whatever you want to call it, was creating a community of people who choose love one person at a time. We're still that community. We will always be that community. That's why we're here. It wasn't long ago, it was only 2 or 3 years ago that we sat down in a large group. I don't even remember how many people were there. I don't remember even who was there, but it was a lot of you guys. And we decided to talk about what our values are. What are the values for CSLNJ that we want to live by? And if you recall, there was a banner to the right-hand side of the stage that had all those values listed on them. I'm just curious, because those are the values we want to practice. Those are the ones we want to put into place. Those are the ones we say we have to be the teaching and we have to live by those values. If you remember any of those values, do me a favor, put them in the chat. I'm curious if you guys can identify or remember what those were. I didn't come up with all of them. There's 7 of them, but I didn't come up with all of them. Love, yep, that's one. So if we look at what those values are, remember, the spiritual culture we're building, we need the values and we need the behavior. We need to actually live this teaching. Without either one of those things, without the values, without the behavior, you don't have a culture. Compassion was not actually one of the words we listed, but I do remember us talking about it though. And of course it is who we are, that's for sure. And as a matter of fact, if you have a pen handy and you want to be reminded of these, I'm going to read them to you right now and you can write them down. The first one on that banner was authenticity and freedom. Everybody's birthright to be themselves and to be free. We had so many, if you recall, we had to put a few together because we had so many. The next was community, diversity, and inclusion. That was the next one down. The next one down was faith and possibility. Next, healing and forgiveness. And of course, love, the next one. Prosperity consciousness. We've been given everything. We need to have our consciousness open to it and know that it is there for us. And the seventh one was spiritual education, which I just referenced. That's what we do. We bring this idea out. We bring this teaching of new thought, this development of the spiritual culture to as many people as we can possibly reach. It's that important. I can't emphasize enough that this has to be practiced. And I'm so glad Michelle said it, because if an idea just remains an idea, what good does it do? It doesn't do anything, right? But you need to put it into action. You need to try it. You need to fail with it if you have to. You need to try again. This is how we change the world. This is how we build and bring forth. We see what works. We know what's going to bring people together. But just having an idea doesn't work. And I'll give you a riddle. Some of you may remember this from a long time ago. 5 frogs are sitting on a log. 2 of them decide to jump off. How many frogs are still on the log? You can just hold up fingers if you want to guess. There are still 5 frogs. Evelyn, you win the prize. Your gift will be coming in the mail. But the post office is really bad these days, so don't get too disappointed if it doesn't show up. That is the riddle. Yeah, they 2 of them decided to jump off, but they didn't do it. So making the decision is useless. And that's why we need to be here as an organization. We need to be here doing this, because we can't let the behavior not be there to support the values in order to be this spiritual community, develop the spiritual culture, and yes, make a world work for everyone. Everyone, each one at a time. If you remember the 60s, it was in all the papers, I'm sure. A bunch of us hippie, love, flower, children, that portion, right? Just envision Marcy running around with flowers in her hair and her love beads, and her tie-dye t-shirt. That was a culture that was being built in the 60s. It was a culture of love. It was a culture of peace and love, right? Freedom. That's what that was all about. Well, what's interesting is that I was there. I was at Woodstock. The whole thing. But then years later, I had started a family, and I had to support the family. And I'm on a bus going into Manhattan in my suit and just doing a horrible job at the job that I had and being miserable. And I'm on the bus, and there was a gentleman on the bus who turned to me. And I'm guessing he was probably my age now, 70 or whatever, 71. And he looked at me, and I don't know what it was that he saw in me, but he saw the hippie in me. And he said, "What happened to you guys?" I'm like, "What?" He goes, "That whole generation, just years ago, you had it. It was the love. It was the peace. It was the freedom. And you just let it go. Where did it go?" And it's funny because This is like 50 years later, maybe 45 years later. And I still remember this guy saying this to me about the fact that what he's saying is you had the culture, you had the values, you had the behavior, but then you stopped the behavior. You didn't follow through with carrying on what needed to be done to develop that culture on a broad basis. We can't let that happen to New Thought. We can't let that happen to this teaching. We have said it over and over and over again since I've been at this center, and that is the world needs what we have. And what we have is such an incredibly beautiful, solid foundation for a spiritual culture. And so do all these other New Thought organizations. It's not just us, but it's definitely something that needs to be lived. It needs to be spoken. It needs to be not something we only whisper about. We need to live it. We need to be proud to tell people that this is what we're doing and this is what we are building. We are the cultural medium. Like Michelle said, this organization has been around for 107 years. Now, in terms of religions, that may not go back that far. But we're the cultural medium. We're the petri dish. We're the ones who are helping this grow. This is why we come together. We don't come together just to be nice and say, oh, that's good. I feel good. Let's go home now. And maybe my life will be better. Yes, that's true. All of that. But it needs to be more than that. We need to bring more to the table. We need to deliver more to our lives in this. Listen, the time for spiritual culture has come. And us in New Thought, in CSL, and in CSL-NJ, we're the ones who realize that this work needs to be done by us as practitioners to put these ideas and these principles into life. That's what we're doing here. We're making everybody's life better because we're developing this incredibly beautiful spiritual culture. I want to thank everybody. There's not many people here today. And certainly there are a lot more people that have been here and built this for a long time. But I am so grateful. I am so grateful for everybody that opened to this idea of New Thought, who opened to this idea that we can build a spiritual culture, to open to the consciousness, not only of the principles of this teaching, but the fact that the world needs what we have. And by that, I mean, you walk out the door and you say hello to somebody on the street or in the store, like Michelle said, we're not proselytizing like crazy. We're not banging them over the head, but we're letting them know that there is an opportunity and that there's possibility. And we do it by how we live it. That's us. That's who we are. So do me a favor. Just go out and be more of yourself. That's going to serve the world greatly. Let's take this into prayer. Oh, so there certainly is a power and a presence. There certainly is this one divine creative intelligence that is one. It is the connectedness, it is the wholeness of every single person, not only in this community, not only in CSL, not only in New Thought, but every being on this plane. And from that divine intelligence, from that creative intelligence, we have the opportunity to walk it, to live it, to know it, and to constantly be open to it and expand our consciousness in the principles of this teaching. From this place, I know that every individual here has a desire to make this a better world, a world that works for everyone. I know that everybody here wants to live for themselves more peacefully, more openly, more prosperously, more abundantly. And what I know is that all exists right now. That all exists right here. It is our birthright. It has been given to us already. And without hesitation, without doubt, but with this wonderful, incredible divine confidence, knowing, allowing, accepting that this is there now, I know that we all walk forward and we bring this forward so that our lives become everything we want them to be, that we open to all possibility, but we live as an example to other people who say, yes, I want that too. It's an enormous gratitude that I have, as I have already expressed, for every single person who built this community, for all of those people who brought new ideas together that we now call New Thought. And in that gratitude, I release these words and I surrender them to that wonderful, beautiful power and presence that always says yes. And so it is.